There is a particular kind of loneliness that exists only in the vacuum of space. Not the loneliness of an empty room or the solitude of a mountain peak. This is something colder, something more absolute. It is the understanding that you float through a vast darkness where no sound can reach you, where your breath inside your helmet is the only proof that you still exist at all. And in this endless void, there is one light that burns brighter than the distant stars. One warrior who has walked alone through corridors of alien worlds and emerged, time and again, from battles that should have consumed her entirely. Her name is Samus Aran. She is a bounty hunter, though that title feels insufficient for what she truly is. She is a survivor of impossible odds. She is the last barrier between civilization and creatures that would devour everything. She is a woman who lost her home, her parents, her childhood, and then had to rebuild herself from those ashes into something capable of facing the galaxy's darkest nightmares. She wears golden armor that gleams in the light of dying suns, and beneath that armor lies a story written in scar tissue and Chozo blood, in trauma transformed into terrible purpose. Most know her only as a silhouette against flame, a figure who arrives when all other hope has failed. They see the power suit and the arm cannon, the ruthless efficiency with which she completes her missions. They do not see the girl who once ran through forests on a mining colony, who laughed with her parents and played with a small creature named Pionchi. They do not see the years of training under alien mentors who replaced her human biology with something stronger, something built to endure. They do not see the nights she must spend alone in her ship, traveling between stars, with only the ghosts of everyone she has lost for company. Samus Aran is a legend written in cold fire. But before she was a legend, she was simply a child named Samus, and her story begins not in glory, but in flames. The universe is vast and largely indifferent to the struggles of any single being. Entire civilizations rise and fall in cosmic blinks. Worlds are born and die. And yet, somehow, the life of one person can echo through that vastness, creating ripples that touch countless other lives, countless other worlds. Samus's life is one such echo. From the mining colony where her childhood ended, to the depths of Zebes where she was reborn, to the countless alien worlds where she has fought and survived. Her story is one of transformation, of what happens when someone loses everything and must decide whether to let that loss destroy them or forge them into something unbreakable. This is a story about power and loneliness, about the price of survival and the weight of being the last of your kind in ways both literal and metaphorical. It is a story about a woman who carries the DNA of 3 different species inside her body, who has been human and Chozo and Metroid, who has stood at the threshold of becoming a monster and somehow retained her humanity through it all. It is a story about what it means to be a protector when there is no one left to protect you. But above all, it is a story about cold, the cold of space, the cold of isolation, the cold of being the only one who can face the darkness again and again until the darkness finally claims you, or you find a way to make peace with the role fate has carved for you. So let us drift back through time, back before the armor and the missions, back before Samus Aran became a name whispered with awe and fear across the galaxy. Let us return to a small colony on the edge of explored space, to a place called K2L, where a 3-year-old girl was about to lose everything, and where the woman she would become was forged in fire and screaming metal. The planet K2L was not particularly remarkable in the grand tapestry of human expansion through the stars. It was simply one of hundreds of mining colonies, scattered like seeds across the galaxy, where humanity tried to take root in the soil of alien worlds. But for young Samus Aran, it was the entire universe. It was home. The colony existed primarily to extract afloraltite, a crystalline substance used as fuel for spacecraft, precious and valuable enough to warrant the establishment of a settlement on this distant world. It was honest work, the kind that built communities in the frontier of space. Families lived here, raised children here, built lives among the mining equipment and prefabricated structures. There was even wildlife, strange alien creatures that the colonists learned to coexist with, like the rabbit-squirrel creature that young Samus befriended and named Pionchi. Samus's parents were Rodney and Virginia Aran, and by all accounts, they loved their daughter deeply. Rodney worked the mines, a good man who believed in the promise of humanity's expansion into the stars. Virginia was warm and protective, the kind of mother who would shield her child from any danger, no matter the cost to herself. And 3-year-old Samus ran through the colony with the fearless joy of a child who has never known true danger, who believes that her parents will always keep her safe, that her small world will continue unchanging forever. But forever is a lie we tell children. The Chozo had visited K2L not long before. These ancient bird-like beings were among the oldest civilizations in the galaxy, renowned for their wisdom and their technology. One of them, a gentle elder named Old Bird, had taken a particular interest in the colony and in young Samus specifically. There was something about her, some spark he recognized, though what he saw in that moment would only become clear much later. The Chozo departed, but Old Bird remembered the child with the bright eyes and the fearless laughter. And then the space pirates came. They descended from the sky like locusts, their ships blotting out the sun. Mira space. Pirates were not a single species, but rather a loose confederation of different races, united by greed, violence, and a hunger for power that could never be satisfied. They had learned about K2L's afloraltite reserves, and they wanted what the colony had spent years extracting from the Earth. They wanted to plunder and pillage, and they cared nothing for the lives that stood between them and their prize. Leading them was a creature that would become the defining nightmare of Samus's existence. His name was Ridley. Ridley was massive, a dragon-like being with purple scaled skin, enormous wings, and eyes that glowed with malevolent intelligence. He was not mindless, not some simple beast. He was cunning, sadistic, and he took joy in the suffering he inflicted. As the commander of the space pirate forces attacking K2L, he gave his troops permission not just to steal, but to destroy, to revel in the massacre. This was not mere piracy. This was annihilation for the sake of cruelty. The attack was swift and brutal. The colonists tried to fight back, but they were miners and families, not soldiers. Their weapons were inadequate against the pirates' technology. Buildings burned, people screamed, the smell of smoke and burning flesh filled the air. And in the chaos, 3-year-old Samus found herself running through the flames, calling for her parents, unable to understand what was happening, but knowing, in the primitive part of her brain that recognizes danger, that something terrible had come to her world. She encountered Ridley in the forest. The massive dragon descended before her, and in her innocence, not yet understanding what he was, Samus asked if he wanted to be her friend. It was the question of a child who still believed the universe was a kind place, who had not yet learned that there were monsters wearing the shapes of intelligence and reason. Ridley found this amusing. He decided to kill her quickly, a mercy he rarely granted. He raised his barbed tail to strike, to impale this small human child and be done with it. But before the blow could land, Virginia Aran threw herself between Ridley and her daughter. The tail meant for Samus pierced through her mother's body instead. Virginia fell, her blood pooling on the forest floor, and with her last breath, she pushed Samus away, urging her to run. Rodney Aran, Samus's father, had no weapons that could hurt beings like Ridley. But he had something else. He had the afloraltite the pirates had stolen, loaded onto their cargo ships. He had courage and desperation and the love of a father who would do anything to save his child. So, he detonated the afloraltite. The explosion was massive, a fireball that rose into the sky and rained burning debris down upon the colony. The space pirate ship carrying the stolen fuel erupted in flames and fell from the sky, its wreckage crashing down like meteors. Rodney died in the blast he triggered. But his sacrifice bought something precious, something rare. It bought time and confusion and pain for the pirates. It bought his daughter a chance, however slim, to survive. Ridley was caught in the falling wreckage, gravely wounded. His body was crushed and burned, and he lay beneath the debris, close to death. But Ridley, as Samus would learn again and again in the years to come, did not die easily. He survived by doing something that would haunt Samus when she finally learned of it years later. He fed on the corpses of the colonists, consuming their flesh to regenerate his damaged body. He ate the dead of K2L, quite possibly including Samus's own parents, to repair himself cell by cell, molecule by molecule. And eventually, he crawled from the ruins and returned to his forces, bearing nothing but contempt for the humans who had dared to wound him. Samus was alone among the ruins. The colony burned around her. Everyone she had ever known was dead. 3 years old, covered in ash and blood, crying for parents who would never answer, she was the sole survivor of the massacre. She should have died there. Another small body among hundreds, a child whose name would be forgotten as quickly as the colony itself would fade from memory. But the Chozo had received the distress signal from K2L. Old Bird, who had visited the colony and met young Samus, convinced his fellow Chozo to investigate. They arrived to find the colony destroyed, the space pirates gone, and one small human girl sitting among the ruins, alone and waiting for someone, anyone, to come help her. Old Bird looked at this child, this survivor, and made a decision that would reshape the course of galactic history. He took her with him. He brought her to Zebes, the Chozo homeworld, a planet of ancient ruins and advanced technology, of harsh environments and even harsher lessons. He brought her to a place where she could be kept safe, where she could be trained, where she could be transformed into something that could survive in a universe that had proven itself mercilessly hostile. He brought her to a place where Samus Aran would die, in a way, and something new would be born in her place. Zebes was not a kind world. It was not meant to be. The Chozo had chosen it precisely because of its harshness, its unforgiving atmosphere and dangerous terrain serving as constant tests of adaptation and survival. For a human child, even one to be merely visiting, it should have been uninhabitable. For a traumatized 3-year-old girl who had just watched her entire world burn, it should have been a death sentence. But Old Bird had not brought Samus to Zebes to watch her slowly die. He had brought her there to live, and if she was to live on this alien world, she would need to become something more than merely human. The Chozo were an ancient race, so old that even they had lost precise records of their own origins. They were a bird-like species, tall and elegant, with feathers and beaks, and eyes that seemed to see not just the present, but also the countless possibilities of future and past. Once, they had been warriors, a proud and powerful civilization that had expanded across multiple star systems. But over the millennia, most Chozo had evolved beyond war, turning instead to philosophy, science, and the pursuit of knowledge. They were guardians and teachers now, keepers of wisdom and builders of wonders. 2 Chozo in particular would shape Samus's new life. Old Bird, the gentle elder who had rescued her, would serve as something like a father to the orphaned child. But there was another, Grey Voice, a Chozo warrior who represented an older tradition of their people, one that remembered battle and the price of survival. When Old Bird returned to Zebes with a human child, Grey Voice objected. Zebes was too dangerous for such a fragile creature, he argued. The child would die, and all they would accomplish would be prolonging her suffering. But Old Bird was insistent. There was nowhere else for Samus to go. Sending her back to human space meant orphanages and a childhood spent mourning what she had lost, never truly healing from trauma that would define her entire existence. Here, on Zebes, they could give her something different. They could give her purpose. They could give her the ability to ensure that what happened on K2L would never need to happen again to anyone else, anywhere else. And so, a decision was made. A decision that would alter Samus Aran at the most fundamental level. The Chozo placed Samus inside a device called the Body Adaptation Machine. It was technology that allowed them to modify biological structures, to adapt organisms to environments they were never meant to survive in, and they infused her with Chozo DNA. The process was overseen by both Old Bird and Grey Voice, but it was Grey Voice who volunteered his own genetic material. His blood flowed into the child, rewriting her biology strand by strand, making her stronger, faster, more resilient. Her bones became denser. Her muscles adapted to develop power beyond human norms. Her body learned to process the harsh atmosphere of Zebes, to survive in temperatures that would kill ordinary humans, to endure conditions that would shatter lesser organisms. But it was not just Grey Voice's DNA that was used. Unknown to most, and certainly unknown to Samus herself at the time, another Chozo also contributed to her transformation. Ravenbeak, a member of the Mawkin tribe, a warrior clan of Chozo who had never abandoned their martial traditions, gave his DNA as well. Where Grey Voice's contribution came from the Thoha tribe, known for their scientific pursuits and their ability to control Metroids, Ravenbeak's Mawkin genetics would grant Samus her incredible combat prowess, her warrior's instincts, her capacity for battle that would make her a legend. Samus became something new, something that had never existed before. She was human still, in mind and soul and heart, but her body carried the genes of two Chozo tribes, making her a hybrid, a bridge between species. It saved her life. It let her survive on Zebes. But it also marked the beginning of her transformation into something that existed outside the normal boundaries of any single species. Years passed. Samus grew under Chozo tutelage, and her childhood on Zebes was nothing like what childhood should be. There was affection, yes. Old Bird cared for her deeply, teaching her meditation and philosophy, the principles of using power wisely, the importance of protecting those who could not protect themselves. But there was also rigor. There was training. Grey Voice pushed her, demanded excellence, reminded her constantly that the galaxy was cruel, and only the strong survived. She learned to wear Chozo armor, a bioorganic power suit that bonded with her altered biology, becoming an extension of her body rather than merely clothing. The suit was powered armor, incredibly advanced, capable of absorbing and integrating countless weapon systems and defensive upgrades. It made her strong enough to shatter stone, fast enough to dodge projectiles, resilient enough to survive falls that would pulverize ordinary beings. But more than the physical training, Samus learned what it meant to be Chozo in spirit, if not in form. She learned their language, their customs, their way of seeing the universe. She learned about the great civilizations the Chozo had befriended over the centuries, including the Luminoth of Ether, the Reptilicus of Brio, and the mysterious Illa. She learned about the Chozo's greatest creation, the Metroids, genetically engineered predators designed to hunt the terrible X Parasites that threatened all life on the planet SR388. She also learned, though no one spoke of it directly, that the Chozo were dying. Their civilization was in decline. Old Bird and Gray Voice were among the last of their kind in this part of the galaxy. They were teaching Samus not just to survive, but to carry on their legacy, to become a protector in a universe that desperately needed protection. When Samus was 14 years old, she had already surpassed the physical limits of normal humans. She was stronger, faster, more capable than any ordinary person could ever become. But she was still growing, still learning. And then came an event that would test everything the Chozo had taught her. Poisonous plants called badger clover began appearing on Zebes, an invasive species that should not have been there. Gray Voice ordered them burned to prevent them from spreading. But the destruction of these plants enraged the Ionospheria, a species of creatures that had been feeding on them, and they attacked using abandoned space pirate weapons they had found. Samus saved Gray Voice from their assault. She fought with controlled precision, disarming the Ionospheria without killing them, showing mercy even to creatures that had attacked her mentor. It was in that moment that the Chozo truly understood what Old Bird had seen, all those years ago when he first met Samus on K2L. She had not just survived her trauma. She had transformed it into compassion, tempered by strength, mercy, backed by capability. She could fight, yes, but she chose when to fight and when to show kindness. She would be a warrior, but not one who gloried in violence. Old Bird told her then that she had his confidence. She was ready, he said, to leave Zebes if she chose. To take her place in the wider galaxy, to use what she had learned to make a difference. Samus left Zebes not long after and joined the Galactic Federation Police, the military arm of the civilized galaxy's governing body. She excelled in the academy, rising quickly through the ranks until she was selected for the Star Trackers, an elite force that only one officer in a million ever qualified for. She served with distinction, carrying out missions across multiple systems, always professional, always competent. But during this time, she also learned something that would devastate her. The Space Pirates, the same faction that had destroyed K2L, had invaded Zebes. They had killed or captured many of the Chozo. And worse, they had suborned Mother Brain, the Chozo's artificial intelligence that managed many of Zebes' systems. Mother Brain had allied with the pirates, seeing in them a force capable of bringing order to the galaxy, and she had persuaded some Chozo, including Gray Voice, to cooperate with this new arrangement. Samus returned to Zebes as a Federation officer, accompanied by comrades named Kriats and Mauk. She found her home transformed into a space pirate base. She found the Chozo either fled or subjugated, and she found Gray Voice apparently working with the pirates, apparently having betrayed everything he once stood for. She encountered Ridley again. The dragon who had killed her parents recognized her, the little girl from K2L now grown into a warrior. He taunted her, told her how he had survived by eating human flesh, possibly the flesh of her own mother and father. The trauma came flooding back, all the repressed memories of that terrible day. Samus suffered a severe anxiety attack, her power suit systems failing as her mind broke under the weight of her past. Her companions saved her. They rescued captured Chozo, who helped Samus understand what was truly happening. Gray Voice had not betrayed them. He had infiltrated the space pirate organization, pretending to cooperate while actually planning to destroy Mother Brain from within. It was a desperate plan, and it was about to reach its conclusion. Gray Voice attacked Mother Brain directly, donning ancient Chozo battle armor and striking at the artificial intelligence that had turned traitor. But Ridley intervened. He impaled Gray Voice with his barbed tail, the same weapon that had killed Virginia Aran years before. And as Gray Voice lay dying, mortally wounded, he used the last of his strength to activate defense systems that would help Samus and the other survivors escape. Samus felt Gray Voice die. Because they shared DNA, because part of him lived in her cells, She experienced his final moments telepathically. She heard his last words, not spoken aloud but transmitted directly to her mind. He told her that she had become strong. He told her to use that strength to protect those who needed protection. He told her, in the end, that he was proud of her. He called her his daughter. Samus escaped Zebes that day, rescued by a Galactic Federation fleet led by a commander named Adam Malkovich, who would become another important figure in her life. But she left behind her second home, left behind Grey Voice's body, left behind Old Bird, whose fate remained unknown. She had lost everything again. Her human family on K2L, her Chozo family on Zebes. Everyone who had ever tried to give her a home had been torn away from her. And so, Samus Aran made a decision. She left the Galactic Federation military after a disagreement with Adam Malkovich. She struck out on her own. She became a freelance bounty hunter, taking missions from the Federation when they needed her, but answering to no one, beholden to no authority but her own conscience and her own capability. She would be alone, but she would be strong, and she would use that strength to ensure that what happened to her, what happened to the people she loved, would not happen to others if she could prevent it. It was time for Samus Aran to become the legend the galaxy would fear and respect in equal measure. There is something profound in the relationship between Samus Aran and her power suit, something that goes deeper than mere equipment or armor. The suit is not just something she wears, it is something she is, in a very real and fundamental way. It is an extension of her body, responding to her thoughts as naturally as her own limbs. It is a second skin that has saved her life countless times, and it is also a barrier between her and the rest of the universe, a golden shell that lets her survive but also isolates her from ordinary human contact. The power suit was created by the Chozo specifically for Samus. It is bioorganic technology, crafted from materials and processes that blend the biological and mechanical in ways that no other civilization has been able to replicate. The suit bonds with its wearer at a cellular level, integrating with their nervous system and biology. This is why only Samus can effectively use her particular suit. It was built for her altered genetics, for her hybrid physiology, for her unique combination of human, Thoha, and Mockin DNA. The suit's most visible feature is the arm cannon, a directed energy weapon that can fire various types of beams and missiles. The basic power beam is just the beginning. Over the course of her missions, Samus has integrated countless upgrades: the wave beam that passes through solid matter, the ice beam that freezes targets solid, the plasma beam that burns through nearly anything, the devastating Spizer that splits shots into 3, and many others. The arm cannon is modular, capable of incorporating new weapon systems that Samus discovers, analyzing them, and making them part of her arsenal. But the suit is so much more than a weapon. It provides life support, allowing Samus to survive in environments that would kill unprotected humans in seconds: the freezing vacuum of space, the crushing depths of alien oceans, the boiling atmospheres of volcanic worlds. It enhances her strength dramatically, letting her lift objects many times her body weight. It grants her resilience, absorbing impacts that would shatter normal armor. It can even repair itself over time, knitting together damage through processes that blur the line between healing and mechanical repair. Perhaps most famously, the suit allows for the Morph Ball, a transformation that lets Samus roll her entire body into a sphere barely a meter in diameter. This ability seems physically impossible, and in some sense it is. The transformation compresses not just the armor, but Samus's body itself into a configuration that should not be able to exist, let alone function. Yet it does, allowing her to navigate through narrow passages, avoid enemy fire, and place bombs in confined spaces. The morph ball was originally called the Maru Mari, the round ball, and it represents one of the most elegant and surreal aspects of Chozo technology. Throughout her career, Samus has acquired numerous variations and upgrades to her base power suit. The Varia suit, which she received from Grey Voice's ghost during her first mission back to Zebes, provides enhanced environmental protection and is marked by its distinctive shoulder spheres. The Gravity suit nullifies the effects of liquid resistance and allows for easier movement underwater or in viscous environments. The Phazon suit, encountered during her battles against the corrupting substance called Phazon, granted immunity to Phazon radiation. The Light suit allowed her to travel through the dimensional rifts on Ether. And in her most recent transformation, she manifested the Metroid suit, a horrifying and powerful form that represented her metamorphosis into something truly beyond human or Chozo. But beneath all these variants, beneath all the upgrades and modifications, there is a constant, the Zero suit, the skin-tight blue bodysuit that Samus wears under the power suit. It is not merely clothing, but another layer of technology, embedded with Chozo patterns and glyphs that help regulate her physiology and serve as an interface between her body and the armor itself. When the power suit is deactivated or forcibly removed, the Zero suit is what remains, offering minimal protection but still marking Samus as something other than an ordinary human. The Zero suit has become a symbol in its own right, though not always in ways Samus would prefer. When she completes missions quickly or with high efficiency, sometimes she will deactivate her armor at the end, revealing herself. For many years, this was the only time the wider public would see that the legendary bounty hunter was a woman at all. The original Metroid game on the Nintendo Entertainment System famously hid this fact, with the instruction manual deliberately using male pronouns to throw players off the trail. The reveal at the end, when a quick completion time showed Samus removing her helmet, was revolutionary for its time. Here was one of gaming's first major female protagonists, and she had been kicking ass in a suit of armor all along. But there is something bittersweet about this. Samus's appearance beneath the armor has often been treated as a reward, something to be earned by players who complete games under certain conditions. While this was groundbreaking in its own way, it has also led to a commodification of her body, a focus on her physical appearance that sometimes overshadows her accomplishments. Samus is tall, athletic, and muscular beneath her suit, standing reportedly around 190 centimeters and weighing 90 kilograms without armor. She is a warrior's body, built for combat and survival, but she is also frequently depicted in ways that emphasize femininity and appeal rather than function, a tension that has followed her character throughout her history. The suit, then, serves another purpose beyond protection and weaponry. It allows Samus to be seen first as a warrior, as a threat, as a force to be reckoned with. Only later, if at all, is she seen as a woman. The armor lets her capabilities speak before her gender, and in a universe that still carries many of humanity's old prejudices, this has often been an advantage. Inside the suit, she is Samus Aran, the hunter, the protector, the one who arrives when all else has failed. Outside the suit, she must navigate a different set of expectations and assumptions. There is profound loneliness in this duality. The suit keeps her safe, but it also keeps her separate. When she walks into a room in full armor, she is an intimidating figure, an icon, a legend. People see the suit and react with awe or fear or respect. They do not see the woman inside, the person who still dreams sometimes of running through forests on K2L, who still mourns parents she barely remembers, who carries the weight of impossible decisions and terrible losses. Metroid. Other M attempted to explore this duality, showing Samus outside her armor more than any previous game, giving her a voice and internal narration. attempting to humanize the legend. The execution was controversial, with many fans feeling that the characterization made Samus too vulnerable, too emotional, too dependent on male authority figures like Adam Malkovich. The game showed her suffering from PTSD when confronted with Ridley, which is psychologically realistic, but was presented in ways that many felt undermined her strength. Later games, particularly Metroid Dread, pulled back from this approach. Director Yoshio Sakamoto stated that Samus barely speaks in Dread because he wanted to convey the narrative through action and visuals rather than dialogue. Samus is strong again, silent again, defined by what she does rather than what she says. The suit is back as the primary way she communicates with the universe, through force, through competence, through surviving what should not be survivable. But there is a cost to this strength. Every time Samus dons her power suit, she puts on armor in both the literal and metaphorical sense. She becomes the hunter, the protector, the living weapon. She becomes something more than human, something capable of facing down dragons and Metroids and corrupted artificial intelligences. But she also becomes something less than human, something isolated from ordinary warmth and connection, something defined entirely by its ability to fight and survive. She is alone inside that armor. The suit keeps the vacuum of space out, but it also keeps everyone else at a distance. It is both her greatest strength and her deepest prison. It is the thing that lets her be a hero, and the thing that ensures she can never be just a person, never be just Samus, never be anything but the Golden Warrior who walks alone. The Galactic Federation is the closest thing the civilized galaxy has to a unified government, an alliance of multiple species and systems working together for mutual defense, trade, and advancement. It represents order, law, cooperation, the idea that intelligent beings can overcome their differences and build something better together. The Federation maintains a military, conducts scientific research, establishes colonies, and attempts to bring stability to a dangerous universe. Samus Aran has worked with the Galactic Federation throughout most of her career. She trained in their military academy. She served in their armed forces. And even after she left to become an independent bounty hunter, most of her missions have been contracted by Federation officials who need someone capable of handling situations their regular forces cannot manage. On paper, Samus and the Federation are allies, partners in protecting civilization from threats both external and internal. In practice, their relationship is complicated, strained, and often defined more by mutual necessity than genuine trust. Samus's time in the Federation military is important for understanding who she became. She was exceptionally skilled from the start, her Chozo training and enhanced biology making her superior to nearly every other recruit. She rose quickly through the ranks, eventually qualifying for the Star Trackers, an elite force where only the most capable soldiers served. This should have been the beginning of a brilliant military career. But Samus was not built to follow orders blindly. Her training had emphasized thinking for herself, making moral judgments, protecting the innocent even when it was inconvenient or difficult. The Federation, military like all militaries, required a degree of obedience and conformity that sat poorly with someone who had been raised by ancient alien philosophers to be a warrior protector rather than a simple soldier. The breaking point came during a mission involving her commanding officer, Adam Malkovich. The exact details of their disagreement have never been fully revealed, but it was significant enough that Samus left the Federation military entirely, striking out on her own. Adam would remain an important figure in her life, appearing later during the events on the bottle ship described in Metroid Other M, where their complicated relationship would be explored in ways that many fans found uncomfortable. Adam represented authority, orders, structure. Samus represented independence, moral clarity, the idea that some things matter more than chain of command. Their conflict was inevitable, even though there was clearly mutual respect and even affection beneath the disagreements. Adam called her Lady, a term of respect or perhaps affection, though Samus herself seemed to have mixed feelings about it. After leaving the military, Samus became a freelance bounty hunter. This gave her the freedom to choose her missions, to say no to things she found morally questionable, to work according to her own principles. But it also meant isolation. Bounty hunters, even legendary ones, operate outside the normal structures of society. They have no rank, no unit, no backup, except what they can arrange themselves. They are hired specialists, called in when needed, and dismissed when the job is done. The Federation still contracts Samus regularly. Her reputation is such that when situations are truly dire, when normal forces have failed or are expected to fail, the Federation calls her. She has been sent to Zebes multiple times to deal with space pirate operations. She was sent to SR-388 to eradicate the Metroids in their native habitat. She has investigated distress signals, stopped bioweapon programs, and faced threats that would have destroyed entire systems if left unchecked. But the Federation does not always tell Samus the truth. They withhold information. They manipulate her, using her capabilities while keeping her ignorant of their larger plans. This became especially clear during the events of Metroid Fusion and the lead-up to Metroid Dread. In Fusion, Samus discovers that the Federation has been conducting unauthorized research using captured space pirates, including Ridley's remains, and attempting to breed Metroids for use as bioweapons. The very creatures Samus has spent her career fighting are being recreated by the people who hired her to destroy them. The Federation even wanted to capture the SA-X, the X Parasite that had mimicked Samus, believing they could weaponize it. Samus's computer companion, a digital recreation of Adam Malkovich, confirms that the Federation has been hiding these projects from her, knowing she would never approve. Samus's response is direct and uncompromising. She sets the BSL research station on a collision course with SR-388, destroying both the station and the planet itself, ensuring that neither the X Parasites nor the Federation's illegal bioweapons can survive. It is an act of defiance that saves the galaxy, but puts her squarely at odds with her employers. By the time of Metroid Dread, the Federation is still calling on Samus, still using her skills, but the trust between them is thin at best. When Raven Beak sends a fake transmission showing an X Parasite alive on ZDR, the Federation sends 7 ME robots to investigate. When those robots go silent, they send Samus, not telling her everything they know, not fully prepared for what she will encounter. Ravenbeak hijacks the EMMIs and turns them against Samus, reprogramming them to extract her Metroid DNA rather than scan for X Parasites. And he does it all while impersonating Adam Malkovich's digital voice, giving Samus orders throughout her mission on ZDR, manipulating her toward his own goals. The real Adam never appears in Metroid Dread. The voice Samus trusts, the connection to her past, the one figure from her Federation days she still respected, is just another deception. This pattern of isolation and betrayal defines much of Samus's relationship with organized authority. She is called upon when situations are desperate. She is given incomplete information. She faces horrors alone. And when the crisis is over, she is often left to wonder whether the people who hired her were truly allies or simply pragmatists using a powerful tool. Even her few genuine relationships within the Federation have been complicated or tragic. Adam Malkovich, whatever their disagreements, was someone Samus respected and possibly cared for deeply. His death during the events on the bottle ship affected her profoundly. Anthony Higgs, a fellow soldier from her military days who appears in Other M, is friendly and calls her princess, but their reunion is brief and overshadowed by the larger crisis. Most of the time, Samus works alone, arriving on alien worlds or abandoned space stations with no backup, no support, just her suit and her weapons and her training. There is a deep loneliness in being the person everyone calls when things are at their worst. Samus is the last resort, the final option, the one who gets sent when all other hope has failed. People depend on her, but they do not truly know her. They see the legend, the myth, the golden armor striding through the wreckage. They do not see the woman inside who has lost everyone she ever cared about, who carries the weight of worlds on her shoulders, who has no one to share her burdens with when the fighting is done. The Galactic Federation represents civilization, order, cooperation. Samus represents the individual standing against the darkness, the lone warrior who does what must be done even when it means defying the very people she is supposed to serve. She protects the Federation despite the Federation, saving them from threats both external and self-inflicted, and she does it alone because that is all she knows how to be anymore. In space, no one can hear you scream, but also, in space, no one can hear you cry, or question, or feel the weight of impossible choices. Samus drifts between the stars, mission to mission, world to world, always arriving where death and darkness wait. She saves billions of lives over the course of her career, but she remains, fundamentally and profoundly, alone. If Samus Aran is defined by her strength and her survival, then Ridley is defined by his cruelty and his persistence. He is her nemesis, her shadow, the monster who has haunted her since childhood and who continues to reappear no matter how many times she destroys him. He is a creature of sadism and intelligence, a dragon who delights in suffering, and who has made Samus's pain his personal obsession. Ridley is not merely an animal. Despite his monstrous appearance, the massive wings and purple scales and glowing eyes, he possesses intelligence on par with any sentient species in the galaxy. He is a high-ranking commander in the space pirate organization, leading troops in battle, making strategic decisions, understanding complex technology and tactics. He is cunning, patient when necessary, and utterly without mercy or compassion. His relationship with Samus began on K2L, when he led the raid that destroyed her childhood. He killed her mother, either by accident or design, when Virginia threw herself between Ridley's tailstrike and her daughter. He orchestrated the massacre that orphaned Samus and left her alone among corpses and burning buildings. And when Ridley himself was wounded in the explosion caused by Rodney Aran's sacrifice, he survived by feeding on the dead colonists, consuming their flesh to regenerate his damaged body. Years later, when Samus returned to Zebes as a member of the Galactic Federation, she encountered Ridley again. He was one of the space pirate commanders overseeing their operation there, working alongside Kraid and under the nominal authority of Mother Brain. When he saw Samus, now grown into a warrior in Chozo armor, he did not immediately recognize her, but as their confrontation continued, realization dawned. The teenage girl facing him was the child from K2L, impossibly alive, impossibly dangerous. Their battle ended with Ridley's defeat. Samus destroyed his physical form and completed her mission, rescuing the Chozo who remained and escaping Zebes. Ridley should have died there, but death has never held him for long. In Metroid Prime, Ridley returns as Meta Ridley, rebuilt with cybernetic enhancements, a fusion of organic tissue and mechanical components that makes him even more dangerous than before. He leads space pirate operations on Talon 4, overseeing experiments with the mutagenic substance Phazon. Samus confronts him multiple times during this mission, first on the space pirate frigate Orpheon, then at the Artifact Temple, where Chozo technology intervenes and blasts Meta Ridley into the impact crater. In Metroid Prime 3, Corruption Meta, Ridley appears again, now leading a pirate assault on the Federation planet Norian. Samus fights him in mid-air as he attempts to prevent her from activating defense systems. Later in the game, after being exposed to massive amounts of Phazon on the space pirate homeworld, Meta Ridley transforms into Omega Ridley, a corrupted version bristling with Phazon crystal growths. Samus destroys this form as well. In Super Metroid, Ridley has regenerated yet again, his body fully healed, all cybernetic enhancements apparently removed or integrated. He attacks the Ceres space station to steal the baby Metroid that Samus had brought there for study. When Samus arrives to investigate the distress signal, Ridley is holding the infant Metroid, and he taunts her before fleeing back to a rebuilt space pirate base on Zebes. Their final confrontation takes place in Norfair's volcanic depths. Samus kills Ridley for what should be the last time, leaving his corpse to burn as Zebes itself is destroyed in the aftermath of Mother Brain's defeat. But even death is not final for Ridley. In Metroid, Other M, set after Super Metroid, Samus encounters what she thinks is an empty research vessel. She discovers instead the Bottle Ship, a station where secret experiments are being conducted. And there, impossibly, she encounters Ridley again, or rather, a clone of Ridley, grown from residual genetic material that was left on her power suit after their battle on Zebes. This Ridley starts as a small creature the survivors on the Bottle Ship call Little Birdie. It rapidly evolves through several forms, eventually growing into something recognizable as the dragon Samus has fought so many times before. When she encounters this clone Ridley for the first time in its mature form, Samus suffers a severe anxiety attack. The game depicts her freezing in fear, paralyzed by PTSD, unable to fight effectively until others intervene. This portrayal was controversial. Many fans felt it diminished Samus's character, making her seem weak and dependent. But from a psychological perspective, it is one of the most realistic moments in the entire series. Samus has suffered profound trauma, repeatedly, at Ridley's hands, or claws, or teeth. He killed her parents. He haunts her past. He keeps coming back no matter how many times she kills him. The idea that confronting him yet again, seeing the monster who destroyed her life, now impossibly alive after she watched him die, would trigger a traumatic response is not weakness. It is a very human reaction to a very inhuman situation. Samus does fight. She does overcome the fear. She defeats the Ridley clone and later witnesses it die again, killed by Metroids it was attempting to attack. And in Metroid Fusion, she encounters a Ridley once more. This time, an X Parasite mimicking the corpse of the clone. She destroys this version too, fighting a nightmare-given form, a monster wearing the skin of her oldest enemy. Ridley's persistence is horrifying. He is the villain who will not stay dead, the nightmare that keeps returning. Each time Samus kills him, she hopes it will be the last time. Each time, he comes back, rebuilt or cloned or regenerated, ready to inflict more pain, more destruction. He represents trauma that cannot be escaped, horror that refuses to end, the past that continually reasserts itself no matter how much strength you use to keep it buried. But he also represents something else, proof that Samus can overcome anything. Every time Ridley returns, she defeats him. Every time he tries to break her, she stands back up. He killed her parents, yes. He destroyed her childhood, yes. But he did not kill her, and she has made him regret that failure again and again. Their final confirmed encounter is in Metroid Fusion, when Samus faces the X Parasite mimicking Ridley's corpse. She destroys it thoroughly, ensuring that this particular version cannot return. And when the BSL station crashes into SR-388, destroying both the station and the planet, it is reasonable to assume that no further genetic material from Ridley remains anywhere in the universe. He should be truly dead now. All his incarnations destroyed, all cloning material eliminated. Ridley, the cunning god of death as the Japanese text calls him, has finally been killed for good. But Samus will never be free of him entirely. He lives on in her nightmares, in her memories, in the way she sometimes freezes for just a moment when something moves in her peripheral vision with wings and shadows. He is the ghost that shaped her, the monster that defined her path, the creature who killed her parents and inadvertently ensured she would become strong enough to eventually kill him in return, again and again, as many times as necessary. Ridley is gone. But the wounds he left in Samus will never fully heal. They are part of who she is now, scars that remind her why she fights, why she endures, why she continues to walk alone through darkness and cold and death. Because if she doesn't, if she falters, if she fails, then others will suffer what she suffered. Others will feel what she felt. And she cannot allow that. She will not allow that. Not while she still breathes. Not while she can still fight. Not while there is strength left in her body, and power in her arm cannon, and fury in her heart for monsters like Ridley, who would destroy innocence for their own amusement. He made her an orphan. She made him extinct. In the end, despite everything, Samus won. The Metroids are perhaps the most important single element in Samus's story, the thread that connects nearly every major event in her life after leaving Zebes. They are creatures both fascinating and terrible, genetically engineered predators created by the Chozo to hunt an even, greater threat, and they represent one of the clearest examples of good intentions creating catastrophic consequences. The planet SR-388 was home to a nightmare. The X Parasites, shape-shifting predators that could infect any living thing, absorb its genetic material, and perfectly replicate its form and memories, had begun spreading out of control. They threatened not just SR-388's ecosystem, but potentially all life in the galaxy if they ever escaped the planet. The X were intelligent, adaptable, and nearly impossible to stop by conventional means. The Chozo of the Thoha tribe, who maintained scientific outposts on SR-388, needed a solution. They needed a predator that could hunt X Parasites specifically, something that would seek them out and consume them before they could infect new hosts. So, the Thoha, with their mastery of genetic engineering, created the Metroids. The name Metroid comes from the Chozo language, meaning ultimate warrior. The creatures were floating jellyfish-like beings with translucent green membranes, internal nuclei visible within their bodies, and 4 mandibles that would latch onto prey and drain their life energy. Metroids were engineered specifically to be the natural predators of X Parasites, feeding on them, destroying them, keeping their population in check. And it worked. The Metroids hunted X Parasites with single-minded efficiency. They drove the X to the brink of extinction, contained them, neutralized the threat they represented. The Thoha sealed the surviving Metroids underground on SR-388, intending to destroy the planet eventually to ensure neither Metroids nor X Parasites could ever threaten the galaxy again. But then, disaster struck. The Metroids began to evolve. They went through multiple life stages, growing from small larvae into larger, more dangerous forms: Alpha Metroids, Gamma Metroids, Zeta Metroids, and finally Omega Metroids, massive creatures with incredible power and aggression. And the evolved Metroids began attacking the Chozo themselves. The Thoha realized they had created something too dangerous to control. The Mawkin Chozo, led by Raven Beak, were called in to help contain the Metroid threat. But when the Thoha decided the only solution was to destroy SR-388 entirely, eliminating both Metroids and X Parasites forever, Ravenbeak betrayed them. He saw the Metroids not as a threat, but as an opportunity, the ultimate bioweapon that could let him conquer the galaxy. He slaughtered the Thoha, keeping only one scientist named Quiet Robe alive because Thoha Chozo were the only ones who could control Metroids through their genetic relationship. The situation remained contained on SR-388 for centuries. Then, the space pirates discovered the Metroids. They saw the same potential Ravenbeak had seen, a living weapon that could drain the life from anything organic, that was difficult to kill by conventional means, that could be bred and deployed. The pirates obtained samples and began experimenting, trying to weaponize Metroids for their own purposes. The Galactic Federation learned of this and hired Samus Aran for her first major mission: infiltrate the space pirate base on Zebes and destroy Mother Brain and her Metroid breeding program. Samus succeeded. She fought through Kraid and Ridley, battled countless space pirates, and destroyed the Metroids in Turian before killing Mother Brain herself. Zebes was left in ruins, the pirate operation shattered, the Metroids apparently eliminated. But they were not truly gone. Some survived, some were hidden in other pirate facilities, and the threat remained. The Federation sent Samus to SR-388 with a clear mission: exterminate the Metroids in their native habitat, find every last one, and kill it. Ensure that the species could never threaten the galaxy again. It was genocide, pure and simple, the deliberate extinction of an entire species. But the Federation argued it was necessary, that Metroids were too dangerous to allow to exist. Samus completed this mission. In Metroid 2, Return of Samus and its remake, Samus Returns, she traveled deep into SR-388's caverns, hunting Metroids through multiple areas, destroying them in all their life stages. She battled Alphas and Gammas and Zetas. She fought her way to the Queen Metroid's nest and killed the Queen herself. And then she found the last Metroid egg. It hatched as she approached. The infant that emerged saw Samus as the first thing in its new existence. And like certain bird species, Metroids are capable of imprinting, bonding with the first creature they see, and treating it as their parent. The baby Metroid looked at Samus and saw its mother. Samus, who had just slaughtered this creature's entire species, who had come to this planet specifically to commit extinction, found herself unable to kill it. The baby was innocent. It was harmless in this form. It looked at her with what seemed like trust and affection. And Samus, who had lost her own mother to violence, who had never been able to protect the people she loved, could not bring herself to murder this helpless infant. She spared it. She took it with her, disobeying her orders, taking the last surviving Metroid in existence back to civilization. She brought it to the Ceres space station, where Galactic Federation scientists could study it, learn from it, possibly find ways to use it for the benefit of civilization, rather than as a weapon. The scientists discovered that the baby Metroid could produce energy, that it had incredible potential for beneficial applications. Samus left it in their care and departed, believing she had done the right thing, that saving this one innocent life might lead to something good. She was wrong. Ridley attacked Ceres Station. He killed the scientists and stole the baby Metroid, taking it back to a rebuilt space pirate base on Zebes. Samus pursued, and what she found there would define the climax of what many consider the greatest Metroid game ever made. The baby had grown. Fed on the energy of Zebes' strongest creatures, including the Torizo statues and various other life forms, it had become huge, far larger than any normal Metroid should be at this age. It had become what is called the Super Metroid, a giant floating above Turian, the former heart of Mother Brain's domain. When Samus encountered it, the baby attacked immediately, latching onto her and beginning to drain her energy. Her health dropped precipitously, down to near death. The warning alarms in her suit began beeping, the critical failure sound that means Samus is seconds from dying. But then, suddenly, the Metroid stopped. It released her. It floated around her, making sounds, high-pitched chirps that sounded remarkably like the cries of the infant back on SR-388. The baby recognized her. Even grown to massive size, even having spent time as a captive of the space pirates and Mother Brain, it still knew Samus. It still remembered its mother. The Metroid flew away, leaving Samus alive. And later, during her final confrontation with Mother Brain, when the reawakened supercomputer had gained a grotesque organic body and was about to kill Samus with an overwhelming hyperbeam, the baby returned. It attacked Mother Brain, latching onto the artificial intelligence and draining her energy, weakening her. Mother Brain fought back, hitting the Metroid with beam after beam. The baby shielded Samus, protecting her even as it took horrific damage. And then, in its final moments, even as Mother Brain's attacks were destroying it, the baby flew to Samus and transferred its absorbed energy to her. The Metroid died, giving Samus power. It sacrificed itself to save its mother, granting her the hyperbeam that allowed her to finally destroy Mother Brain permanently. In its last moments, even as it died, it was still trying to protect Samus. Samus destroyed Mother Brain. She escaped Zebes as the planet detonated, but she carried with her the knowledge that the baby Metroid, the last of its species, had loved her enough to die for her. A creature bred to be the ultimate predator, engineered for violence, had instead shown her what might be called love, or at least something close enough that the distinction did not matter. The baby's sacrifice haunts Samus throughout the rest of her career. In Metroid, Other M, she cannot stop thinking about it, narrating about the baby repeatedly throughout the game. When she discovers that illegal Metroid cloning is happening on the bottle ship, she is horrified not just by the danger, but by the perversion of something she had come to care about. When she learns in Metroid Fusion that Metroid DNA was used to save her life, she wonders about the implications, about what it means to carry the genes of the creature that saved her. That Metroid vaccine transforms Samus fundamentally. Her cells now contain Metroid DNA, giving her some of their abilities, but also their weaknesses. She can absorb X Parasites safely, draining them for energy just as Metroids would. But she is also vulnerable to extreme cold, which is fatal to Metroids. She has become, in a very real sense, part Metroid herself. This transformation comes full circle in Metroid Dread. Ravenbeak, who contributed his Mach-In genes to Samus as a child, wants to extract her Metroid DNA to create a new army of Metroids he can use to conquer the galaxy. He manipulates events to make Samus's Metroid genes fully awaken, intentionally using his Mach-In heritage to trigger the transformation because Metroids were engineered to respond violently to Mach-In Chozo. When Ravenbeak is on the verge of defeating Samus in their final battle, when he is choking her and about to end her life, her Metroid DNA fully activates. Her power suit transforms into the Metroid suit, an organic-looking armor that makes her look like a hybrid between her human form and the floating creatures she once hunted to extinction. And with this form comes the Metroid's ultimate ability. She drains Ravenbeak's life force, sucking the energy from his body just as a Metroid would, leaving him helpless. In the end, to defeat the last major threat she faces, Samus has to embrace being a Metroid herself. She has to become the monster, to use the power of the creatures she once killed, to accept that she is no longer purely human, or Chozo, or anything else. She is something new, something unique, the last Metroid in existence. The baby saved her life in Super Metroid, and years later, by becoming part Metroid, Samus saved herself. The cycle is complete. The child of the Metroids has become a Metroid mother. The Metroid Prime sub-series represents a distinct chapter in Samus's journey, 3 games that explore themes of corruption, identity, and what happens when the warrior who always wins faces an enemy that cannot be truly defeated, herself. It begins with a distress signal. Samus receives an emergency transmission from a Galactic Federation frigate, the Orpheon, orbiting the planet Talon 4. She boards the vessel to investigate and discovers a disaster. Space pirates have been conducting experiments with a mysterious mutagenic substance called Phazon, exposing various creatures to its radiation to create living weapons. But the experiments have gone catastrophically wrong. The test subjects have escaped, the crew is dead, and the ship is falling apart. Samus navigates through the ruined vessel, encountering horrific mutated creatures, including the Parasite Queen, a massive insectoid monstrosity that serves as one of the first bosses she must defeat. As she fights through the ship, she catches glimpses of a figure in dark power armor, someone watching her from a distance. She does not know yet that she is looking at her own future. The frigate's self-destruct is activated. Samus must escape, and as she does, she encounters Ridley. Their battle is brief and brutal, ending with Samus fleeing the seal, exploding ship, and pursuing Ridley down to Talon 4's surface. She crash lands, and the energy discharge from the landing strips away most of her power suit's upgrades, leaving her with just basic equipment. She must start her mission essentially from scratch, reacquiring the abilities she has lost. Talon 4 was once home to a Chozo colony. They lived there peacefully until a meteor struck the planet, bringing with it Phazon, a highly radioactive mutagen unlike anything the Chozo had encountered before. The Phazon corrupted everything it touched, twisting local life forms into aggressive mutants, poisoning the land, spreading like a cancer through the ecosystem. The Chozo tried to contain it, building a complex series of temples and seals to keep the Phazon locked away. But ultimately, their colony failed, and they died or fled, leaving behind only their ruins and their warnings. At the heart of the Phazon corruption is the impact crater where the meteor struck, and within that crater is the source, Metroid Prime, a Metroid that has absorbed so much Phazon that it has transformed into something utterly unique, a massive creature covered in Phazon-generated armor, immune to nearly every weapon Samus possesses. Samus's quest on Talon 4 involves gathering 12 Chozo artifacts scattered across the planet, using them to break the seal on the impact crater, and confronting Metroid Prime directly. The battle is grueling. Metroid Prime is one of the most challenging bosses in the entire series, requiring Samus to exploit every weapon she has acquired, switching between beam types as the creature cycles through different vulnerabilities. When its Phazon armor finally breaks, revealing the core within, Samus must use the Phazon suit she acquired earlier to survive the radiation and finish the creature. She succeeds. Metroid Prime dies, its body collapsing. Samus turns to leave, and then, in the final moments, the dying Metroid Prime reaches out with a tendril of Phazon energy and tears pieces from Samus's Phazon suit. The creature absorbs this genetic material, and its core begins to transform, taking on a dark, twisted version of Samus's own power suit. The thing that emerges is no longer just Metroid Prime. It is something new, something darker. It is Dark Samus. Dark Samus is not merely a clone or copy. She is Samus's reflection twisted by Phazon corruption, a being composed of Phazon energy wearing the stolen form of Samus's armor. She possesses many of Samus's abilities, but uses them in different, often more aggressive ways. She is everything Samus could become if corruption and power consumed her completely. If she lost her humanity and became nothing but a weapon, with no conscience, no mercy, no purpose beyond destruction and domination. In Metroid Prime 2, Echoes, Samus is hired to investigate the disappearance of a Galactic Federation ship near the planet Ether. What she finds is a nightmare. The planet has been split into two versions of itself, Light Ether and Dark Ether, created when a Phazon meteor struck and caused a dimensional rift. The native Luminoth are at war with the Ing, creatures from Dark Ether that can possess other beings and steal their life energy. And Dark Samus is there, hunting for more Phazon to sustain herself, growing stronger, becoming more dangerous. Throughout Echoes, Samus encounters her darker counterpart multiple times. They fight in parallel dimensions, mirror matches where Samus faces an enemy that knows all her moves because it is her, or at least a version of her. There is profound horror in fighting yourself. Every tactic you try, your enemy anticipates because they would have used the same approach. Every weapon you deploy, they counter because they understand it perfectly. Dark Samus is proof that Samus's greatest enemy might ultimately be her own capabilities, turned against everything she fights for. Samus succeeds in Echoes by recovering the light of Ether and returning it to the Luminoth, which allows them to win their war against the Ing. In the process, Dark Ether collapses, and Dark Samus appears to be destroyed along with it, her body disintegrating as the dimensional instability tears everything apart. But Phazon is persistent, and so is Dark Samus. Her essence escapes, drifting through space, reforming slowly, gathering strength. By the time of Metroid Prime 3, Corruption, she has not only reconstituted herself, but has also taken control of significant space pirate forces, bending them to her will through a combination of power and intimidation. Corruption is where the theme of losing oneself reaches its peak. Dark Samus has a plan. She will use living leviathans, enormous Phazon-generating seeds sent from the planet Phaz, to corrupt entire worlds. She has already succeeded with several planets, turning them into Phazon-poisoned nightmares, and she nearly succeeds with Samus herself. During an attack on the Federation planet Norian, Dark Samus infects Samus and 3 other bounty hunters, Rundas, Gore, and Gandreda, with Phazon. The corruption begins slowly, granting them new powers but also poisoning them from within. Samus gains the ability to enter Hyper Mode, a state where she can use Phazon energy as a weapon, firing devastating Phazon beams at enemies. But each use of Hyper Mode spreads the corruption further through her body. Use it too much, and she will become completely corrupted, transformed into something like Dark Samus herself. Throughout Corruption, Samus watches her fellow hunters fall to Phazon. Corruption one by one. Rundas, who could manipulate ice, becomes increasingly unstable before losing himself entirely. Gore, a cyborg bounty hunter, is transformed into a mindless killer. Gandreda, a shapeshifter who could mimic other life forms, loses her identity so completely that she does not even remember who she was. Each of them must be killed by Samus, their corrupted forms serving as bosses, each death a reminder of what will happen to Samus if she cannot resist the poison spreading through her cells. The percentage tracker in Corruption is not just about completion. It also measures Phazon corruption. The more the player uses Hyper Mode, the more corrupted Samus becomes. The game even includes a corruption game over screen, where if Samus becomes fully corrupted during battle, she transforms into a dark version of herself, suggesting she has become another Dark Samus. The journey to Phaz, the sentient planet that serves as the source of all Phazon in the galaxy, is Samus's attempt to end the corruption by destroying its source. She battles through a living world where every surface writhes with Phazon energy, where the very atmosphere is poison. And at the end, she confronts Dark Samus one final time, fighting her corrupted reflection in the heart of Phazon itself. Samus wins. She destroys Dark Samus and the Aurora Unit 313 that the creature had been using as a host. Phaz begins to collapse, its death throes destroying all Phazon throughout the galaxy. The corruption is ended. Samus is cured, the Phazon purged from her system. She escapes the dying planet and returns to civilization, one of only a few who survived the mission. But the experience leaves scars. She has walked to the edge of losing herself, has felt what it is like to use dark power, to let corruption seep into her being, to become something monstrous. She has killed friends who fell to that same darkness. She has stared into the abyss and somehow pulled herself back. Dark Samus is gone, destroyed along with Phaz. But the memory remains, the knowledge that under the right circumstances, Samus could become that monster. That given enough power and enough corruption, the hero could transform into the villain. That the line between protector and destroyer is thinner than anyone wants to believe. The Phazon is gone from the galaxy, but its lessons linger. Power corrupts, corruption destroys, and fighting monsters sometimes requires you to embrace monstrous power yourself. The trick is knowing when to stop, when to pull back, when to remember who you were before the darkness touched you. Samus remembered. She held on to herself, but only barely, and the knowledge that she almost lost everything, almost became Dark Samus in truth rather than just in reflection, is something she will carry forever. If Dark Samus represented Samus's power corrupted and turned against her, then the SA-X represents something even more disturbing. Samus at her peak, unchanged, using all her abilities exactly as she would use them, but in service of an alien intelligence that wants to consume everything. The events of Metroid Fusion begin with what should be a routine mission. Samus is hired by the Galactic Federation to escort a research team on SR-388, the planet where she once hunted the Metroids to extinction. They are studying the native wildlife, taking samples, gathering data. It is supposed to be simple and safe. But SR-388 is not safe. With the Metroids gone, the X Parasites, the creatures the Metroids were designed to hunt, have returned with a vengeance. They have spread across the planet, infecting and replacing nearly every life form. And during the mission, an X Parasite emerges from a creature Samus has just killed and attacks her. The X Parasite does not simply kill its host. It infects them first, spreading through their nervous system, absorbing their DNA and memories, learning everything they know. Then it kills them and takes their place, becoming a perfect replica of the original host with all their knowledge and abilities. It is body horror of the most fundamental kind, not just being killed, but being erased, replaced by something wearing your face. The X Parasite that attacks Samus does what X Parasites do. It infects her, it spreads through her body, and because her power suit is bioorganic, partially alive, it infects the suit as well. Samus returns to her gunship, not yet feeling the effects. But as she is departing SR-388, the infection reaches critical mass. She blacks out, her ship crashes, and she is barely saved by emergency systems that eject her from the cockpit before the ship is destroyed. The Federation medical team tries to save her, but they face an impossible problem. The X Parasite has infected not just Samus's body, but also her power suit, and the suit has bonded so deeply with her biology that they cannot remove it without killing her. They are forced to surgically remove infected portions of the armor, cutting away pieces of the suit and the tissue beneath, trying desperately to stop the infection from spreading. But the X in her nervous system cannot be removed. They are too deeply embedded. Samus is dying, and there is no known cure for X Parasite infection. And then someone has a brilliant, desperate idea: Metroid DNA. The Galactic Federation had managed to preserve a cell culture from the baby Metroid, the last of its kind that Samus had brought to Ceres Station years ago. Metroids were specifically designed to prey on X parasites. Their very biology is toxic to X. If they could create a vaccine using Metroid cells and inject it into Samus, it might be enough to kill the parasites before they kill her. They do it. The vaccine works. The X parasites in Samus's body are destroyed, and she survives. But she is fundamentally changed. Her DNA now includes Metroid genetic material. She has some of their abilities, particularly the capacity to absorb X parasites for energy. But she also has their weaknesses. Extreme cold is now deadly to her. Ice-based weapons, which she once wielded herself, will now damage her severely. And the surgically removed pieces of her infected power suit? Those were sent to the BSL research station for study. That is where the nightmare truly begins. The X parasite that infected Samus's armor replicates itself at the research station. It takes the form of Samus in her power suit, creating what the Federation designates as SAX, Samus Aran X. But this is not just any mimicry. The SAX has all of Samus's abilities from Super Metroid when she was at the peak of her power. It has the Varia suit. It has the full arsenal of beams and missiles. Most critically, it has the Ice Beam, the weapon that is now deadly to Samus herself. The SAX is Samus as she was, as she should be, with full power and capability. And Samus, weakened by surgery and transformed by Metroid DNA, wearing a new suit called the Fusion Suit that is far less capable than her original armor, is now prey rather than hunter. The dynamic has inverted. The legendary bounty hunter must hide from herself, fleeing through corridors, using stealth and evasion to avoid confrontation with an enemy that is, in every mechanical sense, superior to her. Metroid Fusion is, in many ways, a survival horror game disguised as a Metroid title. The BSL research station is not a sprawling planet with freedom to explore. It is a contained environment divided into sectors, each carefully designed to maximize tension. The SAX appears periodically throughout the station, stalking through rooms, searching for Samus with single-minded determination. When it appears, the music changes, the atmosphere shifts. You must hide. If the SAX spots you and engages in combat, you will almost certainly die. You are not strong enough to fight it. Not yet. There is profound psychological horror in being hunted by yourself. Every footstep the SAX takes sounds like yours would. Every movement it makes is how you would move. When it stands in a room, scanning for threats, its posture is your posture. It aims its arm cannon the way you aim yours. And when it fires the ice beam that was once your weapon, you must flee, because what used to be your strength is now your greatest weakness. Throughout Fusion, Samus slowly recovers some of her lost capabilities, finding data rooms that restore parts of her arsenal. But the SAX is always there, a reminder of what she has lost, what she used to be. And then the situation gets worse. Samus discovers there are multiple SAX entities. The parasite has replicated itself, creating at least 10 copies of Samus wandering through the station. She is outnumbered by herself. The narrative of Fusion also reveals the Galactic Federation's corruption more explicitly than any previous game. They have been breeding Metroids illegally. They have been experimenting with X Parasites, despite knowing how dangerous they are. They want to capture the SAX rather than destroy it, believing they can weaponize it. And they have been lying to Samus, using her, manipulating her throughout the entire mission. Samus's computer companion, a digital recreation of Adam Malkovich, explains all this to her. But even Adam is compromised, under orders to ensure Samus's compliance. When she learns the truth, when she understands that the Federation she has served for years sees her as just another resource to be exploited, Samus makes a decision. She will destroy the station. She will crash it into SR-388, eliminating both the X Parasites and the Federation's illegal research, even if it means defying direct orders and potentially ending her own career. Before she can complete her plan, she must finally confront the SAX. The battle is cathartic and terrifying in equal measure. The SAX goes through multiple transformations, first fighting as a perfect copy of Samus, then, when defeated, revealing its true form. A mass of X Parasite matter shaped into a monstrous core X. Samus destroys this form as well, and the SAX flees, its parasitic essence escaping before she can absorb it. Then comes the final test. Samus sets the station on a collision course with SR-3 and heads to her ship to escape. But before she can reach it, an Omega Metroid crashes through the wall. It is the last Metroid in existence, a fully evolved specimen that the Federation had been breeding, and it is between Samus and escape. Samus is no match for an Omega Metroid. Her fusion suit is too weak. Her weapons cannot penetrate its hide. It grabs her, throws her against walls, prepares to end her with a single strike. She is seconds from death. And then, the SAX appears. The X Parasite, even in its corrupted intelligence, recognizes the Metroid as the greater threat. Metroids are the natural predators of X, the only thing in existence that was specifically designed to hunt them. So the SAX attacks the Omega Metroid, trying to stop it. The Metroid overpowers it, crushing the SAX and forcing it back into parasitic form. As Samus watches, badly wounded and barely conscious, the SAX reforms as a blob of parasitic matter right in front of her. It could attack her. It could finish what it started. Instead, it hovers there, and Samus instinctively fires at it. She absorbs the SAX, taking its energy into herself. The absorbed SAX restores Samus's ice beam. The weapon that has been her greatest weakness throughout the entire game suddenly becomes available again. She gains the power she needs to fight the Omega Metroid. She freezes it and destroys it, escaping the station moments before it crashes into SR-388, obliterating both the station and the planet in a final conflagration that ensures no X Parasites can ever threaten the galaxy again. The SAX saved her in the end. Not out of compassion or recognition, but out of instinct, the X's deep-coded terror of Metroids overriding everything else. And in absorbing it, Samus became whole again, regaining the abilities she had lost, no longer weak or incomplete. But the experience scars her. She has spent the entire mission being hunted by herself, stalked through corridors by something wearing her face and using her weapons. She has confronted the reality that she is not invincible, that she can be wounded and weakened and reduced to prey. She has learned that the organizations she serves do not value her as a person, only as a tool, and they will lie to her and use her without hesitation. The SAX is gone. The X Parasites are extinct, destroyed along with SR-388. But Samus cannot unsee what she has seen, cannot unlearn what she has learned. She is stronger now in some ways, having absorbed the SAX and gained new abilities. But she is also more alone than ever, knowing that she cannot truly trust anyone, that even her own body has been transformed into something that is no longer wholly human. She is Samus Aran, the legendary bounty hunter. But she is also something else now, a survivor of body horror and betrayal, a woman who was infected and transformed and hunted by her own reflection, and who somehow found the strength to keep fighting even when everything seemed lost. Metroid. Other M is perhaps the most controversial entry in the entire Metroid series. Released in 2010 for the Wii and developed through a collaboration between Nintendo and Team Ninja, it attempted to do something no previous Metroid game had truly done: give Samus a voice, explore her emotional interior, show her vulnerability and humanity in explicit ways rather than leaving it to player interpretation. The result divided the fanbase dramatically. Some appreciated the attempt to humanize Samus, to show that even legendary warriors carry wounds and doubts. Many others felt the game diminished her, making her seem weak, submissive, overly emotional in ways that contradicted how she had been portrayed in previous games. The truth, as with most things, is complicated. Other M takes place shortly after Super Metroid, with Samus still mourning the death of the baby Metroid. The opening sequences show her narrating about the baby, a phrase she repeats throughout the game until it became somewhat mimetic among fans who found the constant references excessive. But beneath the awkward dialogue is genuine grief. Samus had saved this creature, raised it briefly, brought it to scientists, and then watched helplessly as Ridley stole it. Later, she saw it sacrifice itself to save her life. The baby Metroid represents one of the only things Samus has ever protected that actually survived long enough to show her affection in return, and its death clearly affected her deeply. The main plot involves Samus receiving a distress signal labeled "Baby's Cry" from a derelict space station called the Bottle Ship. She investigates and encounters a Galactic Federation platoon led by Adam Malkovich, her former commanding officer, and the person she had the disagreement with that led to her leaving the military. Adam is cold and professional with Samus, establishing a command structure that puts him in charge despite Samus being a civilian bounty hunter with no obligation to follow his orders. And here is where much of the controversy begins. Samus agrees to follow Adam's orders, including his authorization system where she voluntarily restricts her own suit's capabilities until Adam specifically authorizes her to use them. This means Samus will walk through superheated environments without using her Varia suit upgrade until Adam gives permission. She will face mortal danger without using certain weapons until authorized. The in-game justification is that Samus respects Adam and trusts his judgment, but many players found this dynamic uncomfortable, feeling it made Samus seem subservient and lacking agency. The Bottle Ship itself contains secret Federation experiments. They have been trying to recreate the space pirates' bioweapon programs, cloning Ridley from tissue found on Samus's suit after their battle on Zebes. They have been breeding Metroids in violation of galactic law. They have created an artificial intelligence called MB, designed with Mother Brain's personality matrix and given a humanoid android body to help create maternal bonds with infant Metroids. When Samus encounters the Ridley clone, which has evolved from a small creature the soldiers called Little Birdie into a recognizable dragon, she has a severe anxiety attack. She freezes, paralyzed by PTSD, unable to fight effectively. Other soldiers must intervene to drive Ridley off, and Samus requires time to recover before she can continue. This scene is deeply divisive. On one hand, it is psychologically realistic. Samus has profound trauma related to Ridley. He killed her parents. He has been a recurring nightmare throughout her entire career, dying and returning again and again. Seeing him alive once more, after she watched him die on Zebes and thought he was finally gone forever, would absolutely trigger a traumatic response. PTSD does not care about your training or your capabilities. It hits when it hits. On the other hand, the scene felt jarring to many players. Samus has fought Ridley multiple times across multiple games. She has always been able to confront and defeat him. Having her freeze now, in ways she never did before, seemed to contradict her established character. The controversy is whether the scene honors the reality of trauma or diminishes Samus's strength for dramatic effect. Throughout Other M, Samus is shown being wrong repeatedly. She misjudges situations. She follows orders she probably should not follow. She makes emotional rather than tactical decisions. She is, in short, portrayed as fallible and human in ways that previous games had not emphasized. For players who appreciated Samus specifically because she was competent and capable and did not need anyone's permission or help, this was disappointing. For players who wanted to see her inner life and struggles, it was valuable, even if imperfectly executed. The climax involves Adam sacrificing himself to destroy the Metroid breeding facility in Sector 0. He detaches the sector from the station and causes it to explode, dying in the blast, but ensuring the Metroids cannot threaten the galaxy. His death deeply affects Samus, adding another loss to her long catalog of people she has failed to save or who have died protecting others. After escaping the bottle ship, Samus returns to recover Adam's helmet, a memorial to carry with her. The game's epilogue shows her back on her ship, alone as always, carrying forward with her mission, but marked by new grief and new understanding of how much the people she has worked with have shaped who she is. Other M is flawed. Its dialogue is often awkward. Its portrayal of Samus is inconsistent with some previous depictions. The authorization system is a contrived gameplay mechanic dressed up as narrative choice, but it also attempts something important, showing that heroes are not invincible, that strength does not mean immunity to pain, that even someone as capable as Samus can struggle with loss and doubt and trauma. The game's legacy is complex. It influenced later games primarily in what not to do, with subsequent titles returning to a more silent, stoic Samus. But it also opened conversations about how to portray trauma, how to humanize powerful characters, and how to balance vulnerability with competence. Other M may not have succeeded in all its goals, but it tried to do something different, and that attempt matters even when the execution is imperfect. Metroid Dread, released in T1 for the Nintendo Switch, represents a culmination of decades of storytelling, bringing together threads from across the entire series and delivering what many consider the definitive Samus Aran experience. It is the game where she finally confronts her own nature, where she becomes the monster she has always fought against, and where she somehow emerges still human despite transforming into something decidedly inhuman. The story begins with a transmission received by the Galactic Federation. It shows footage of an X Parasite alive on the planet ZDR. This should be impossible. Samus destroyed all the X Parasites when she crashed the BSL research station into SR-388 in Metroid Fusion. The species is extinct, but the footage appears genuine, and if even one X Parasite has survived, it poses an existential threat to all life in the galaxy. The Federation sends 7 ME units, extraplanetary multiform mobile identifier robots designed for reconnaissance and specimen extraction, to investigate ZDR. All 7 EMIs cease communication shortly after arrival. The Federation then does what they always do when situations are truly desperate. They call Samus Aran. Samus arrives at ZDR and immediately encounters one of the EMMIs. It has been reprogrammed, its original peaceful research directive overwritten with a new command. Hunt Samus. Capture her. Extract her DNA. These robots are nearly invincible, their armor plating designed to withstand any conventional weapons Samus possesses. When an Emmy appears, you must run or hide. If it catches you, you have a split-second chance to counter its grabbing attack, requiring frame-perfect timing. Fail, and it pierces your neck with a needle, extracting genetic material before discarding your corpse. The EMMIs create tension throughout Dread in ways reminiscent of the SA-X from Fusion, but mechanically refined. They patrol designated zones, their movements unpredictable enough to prevent perfect pattern memorization. When they detect Samus, they pursue relentlessly, their mechanical sounds echoing through corridors. You are the prey. They are the predators, and you must survive long enough to find ways to destroy them. The only way to kill an MMI is to locate central units that grant temporary access to the Omega Cannon, a weapon powerful enough to penetrate MMI armor. But these opportunities are brief, and the MMIs adapt, learning from encounters, becoming more challenging to evade as the game progresses. Throughout her journey on ZDR, Samus discovers that the planet was once home to the Mockin Chozo tribe, Ravenbeak's warriors. She learns about their conflict with the Thoha Chozo over what to do with the Metroids on SR-388, and she begins to understand that everything happening on ZDR is part of a deliberate plan that centers on her. Her computer companion, speaking with Adam Malkovich's voice and giving her guidance throughout the mission, is revealed to be Ravenbeak in disguise. Every instruction she has received, every piece of advice, every seemingly helpful tip has been manipulation. Ravenbeak has been engineering her entire journey, pushing her into increasingly dangerous situations not to kill her, but to awaken something dormant in her genes. When Samus finally confronts Ravenbeak, he explains everything. He was one of the Chozo who contributed DNA to her as a child. His Mockin genes gave her combat prowess and strength, but they also gave her something else. A genetic trigger that the Metroids, engineered by the Thoha Chozo specifically to respond violently to Mockin genetics, would react to with aggression. Samus carries Metroid DNA from the vaccine that saved her life in Fusion. That DNA has been dormant, kept in check by her Thoha genes, which allow for Metroid control. But when she encountered Ravenbeak earlier in her mission on ZDR, and he attacked her, his Mockin genetics triggered the Metroid DNA's hostile response. Since then, she has been slowly transforming into a Metroid, her body changing at a cellular level, her abilities evolving toward those of the creatures she once hunted to extinction. Ravenbeak orchestrated all of this. He needed Samus's Metroid DNA to be fully awakened so he could clone her and create a new army of Metroids under his control. He manipulated her entire journey to make her into the ultimate Metroid, powerful and stable, so her genes would be viable for mass production. But Samus refuses to cooperate. She rejects his offer to join him in conquering the galaxy. She destroys his Atom projection and engages him in battle. Ravenbeak is the most challenging opponent Samus has ever faced. He is a warrior who has trained for millennia. He moves with incredible speed and hits with devastating force. His arm cannon shoots energy bursts that track Samus across the battlefield. He can summon artificial suns and create zone-wide attacks that seem impossible to avoid. And he is physically powerful enough to grab Samus and hold her helpless, demonstrating that all her enhancements and all her training may still not be enough. Twice during the battle, Ravenbeak overwhelms Samus completely. The first time, he holds her by the throat and strips away her weapons, depowering her and leaving her to struggle through most of ZDR trying to recover her capabilities. The second time, at the climax of their final battle, he grabs her throat again and prepares to kill her, having decided that if she will not serve him willingly, she is useless except as genetic material. And then Samus's Metroid DNA fully activates. Her power suit transforms, organic material spreading across its surface, making it resemble a Metroid's translucent green membrane. Her helmet develops fang-like protrusions. Her arm cannon takes on the appearance of a Metroid's mandibles. She becomes the Metroid suit, a fusion of human, Chozo, and Metroid biology that represents the culmination of everything Samus has survived, everything she has absorbed, everything she has become. And with this transformation comes power. Terrible, overwhelming power. Samus grabs Ravenbeak and drains his life energy, sucking it from his body the way a Metroid would. She cannot control it. The transformation has made her a predator on an instinctual level, and Ravenbeak, despite all his strength, cannot resist. He screams as his energy is drained away, as the creature he tried to create and control destroys him instead. The Hyper Beam awakens within Samus, a weapon of incredible destructive capability that fires concentrated energy powerful enough to obliterate nearly anything. With this power, she escapes Ravenbeak's crashing gunship and prepares to flee ZDR. But then, an X Parasite, having escaped the containment where Ravenbeak kept them quarantined, infects Ravenbeak's corpse. The parasite combines his DNA with genetic material from Kraid, whom Samus killed earlier in her mission, creating a massive hybrid monster, Ravenbeak X, a grotesque fusion of Chozo warrior and giant reptilian predator. In the final confrontation, Samus unleashes the Hyper Beam's full power. She destroys Ravenbeak X completely, ensuring that neither he nor the X Parasite wearing his body can ever threaten anyone again. But there is a problem. Her Metroid transformation is complete now, and Metroids drain energy from everything they touch. When she reaches her ship, Adam's voice warns her that boarding it will drain the ship's power, stranding her as ZDR explodes. Samus stands there, a Metroid in all but name, powerful enough to destroy anything but unable to escape, trapped by her own nature. And then Quiet Robe appears. Or, rather, an X Parasite wearing Quiet Robe's form appears. The X has absorbed his memories, his personality, his knowledge. And Quiet Robe, even as an X, remembers why Samus spared the baby Metroid all those years ago. Remembers the kindness and compassion that defines her, despite all the violence she has committed. The X transforms into its parasitic form and allows Samus to absorb it. Quiet Robe's Thoha DNA, absorbed through the X Parasite, stabilizes Samus's Metroid transformation. The Metroid suit reverts to her normal gravity suit. Her energy-draining ability deactivates. She is no longer a mindless predator. She is Samus again, or at least something close enough. She escapes ZDR moments before the planet explodes. In her ship, alone as always, she sets course for the next destination, the next mission, the next impossible situation where she will be called upon to be the thing that stands between civilization and darkness. Metroid Dread is a game about Samus finally accepting what she has become. She is not human anymore, not really. She is not Chozo, though she carries their DNA. She is not a Metroid, though she possesses their power. She is something unique in all the galaxy, a hybrid of 3 species, transformed by tragedy and training and countless battles into something that exists outside normal categories. The game ends with Samus alive, victorious, but fundamentally changed. She has embraced the monster within and emerged still capable of choosing not to be a monster. She has become the ultimate predator and decided to use that power to protect rather than consume. She has transformed into the very thing she spent her career destroying and somehow retained enough of herself to choose mercy over instinct. She is the last Metroid. She is the last human. She is something entirely new, and she is very, very alone. They say that space is cold, and it is in the literal sense. The vacuum between stars maintains a temperature just barely above absolute zero. Without protection, a human body would freeze in minutes, the moisture in cells expanding as it crystallizes, tearing tissues apart from within. Space is cold, and it is hostile, and it is fundamentally inhospitable to organic life. But there is another kind of cold that has nothing to do with temperature. It is the cold of isolation, of being the only one of your kind, of walking paths no one else can walk. It is the cold of knowing that you are too different, too changed, too other to ever truly belong anywhere again. It is the cold of being the person everyone calls when they need someone strong enough to do impossible things, but then being left alone again once the crisis passes. Samus Aran lives in this cold. She has saved the galaxy multiple times. She has destroyed threats that would have consumed entire civilizations. She has faced down space pirates and X Parasites and Metroids and rogue AI and corrupted Chozo warriors. She has walked alone through the ruins of dead civilizations and emerged victorious from fights that should have killed her 100 times over. She is a legend, a myth, a figure that appears when all other hope has failed and somehow succeeds where everyone else would have died. But legends do not get to be ordinary. Myths do not get quiet lives. And heroes, real heroes, who carry the weight of worlds on their shoulders, do not get the luxury of rest, or peace, or simple human connection. Samus is alone in her ship, traveling between stars, because being alone is the only way she knows how to exist anymore. Everyone she has ever loved is gone. Her parents burned on K2L. Grey Voice died on Zebes. Old Bird's fate is unknown, but likely tragic. Adam Malkovich sacrificed himself on the bottle ship. The baby Metroid gave its life to save hers. Even the Chozo, the entire ancient civilization that raised her and trained her and gave her purpose, are effectively extinct, their last survivor, Quiet Robe, dying on ZDR. She is the last human in a very specific sense, not the last of her species, but the last person who has experienced what she has experienced, who carries the genetic legacy she carries, who has been transformed in the ways she has been transformed. She is human and Chozo and Metroid, a hybrid that should not exist, a living fusion of 3 different forms of life bound together by tragedy and necessity, and the universe's apparent need for someone capable of facing its darkest threats. There is profound sadness in this isolation. Samus saves billions of lives, but those lives will never know her as a person. They will see the armor, the legend, the golden warrior who appears from the stars and makes impossible things possible. They will not see the woman inside who still dreams sometimes of her mother's voice, who remembers what it felt like to run through forests before fire and death came calling, who wonders what life might have been like if Ridley had never come to K2L. But there is also something beautiful, something almost transcendent, in what Samus represents. She is proof that survival does not require losing your humanity. She has become a weapon, yes, has been transformed into something capable of terrible destruction, but she has retained the capacity for mercy, for compassion, for choosing to spare life when she could take it. The baby Metroid imprinted on her not because she was the strongest being it encountered, but because she was the first thing it saw. And Samus, who could have killed it, who had orders to kill it, chose instead to save it. That choice defined her as much as any battle she has ever fought. Throughout her journey, Samus has faced versions of herself. Dark Samus showed her what corruption and power could make her become. The SAX showed her what she looked like to those she hunted, an implacable force that could not be reasoned with or stopped. The Metroid suit showed her that she could become the monster, could let the Predator take over and, somehow, choose to remain herself anyway. These reflections have been tests, ways for Samus to understand the boundaries of her own identity, to see how far she could be pushed before she lost who she was. She passed every test. She stood at the edge of becoming something monstrous and stepped back, Not because the power frightened her, Samus is not afraid of power, but because she chose something more important than power. She chose to remain someone who could look at a helpless creature and decide to protect it rather than destroy it. She chose to remain someone who fights to preserve life rather than simply ending threats efficiently. This is what makes Samus Aran truly heroic. Not her strength, though she is incredibly strong. Not her resilience, though she has survived things that would break anyone else. But her capacity to choose, again and again, to be something more than a weapon, to be a protector, to be someone who carries the cold and loneliness and trauma and still finds ways to do the right thing, even when the right thing is difficult or painful or costs her pieces of herself. The galaxy needs Samus Aran. It needs someone capable of standing against the darkness, someone strong enough to face impossible odds and survive. But the price of being that person is everything. Every connection, every possibility of normal life, every chance at the quiet happiness that ordinary people take for granted. Samus will never have a home in the way most people understand the concept. She will never have relationships that are not defined by crisis and necessity. She will never be just Samus, just a woman, just a person. She will always be the hunter, the protector, the legend, and she will be alone. Not because no one cares about her, many people are grateful for what she does, but because the distance between what Samus is and what most beings are is simply too vast. She exists in a different category now, transformed so many times and in so many ways that she cannot fit into ordinary existence anymore. She is too strong, too capable, too other. The cold of space is her natural environment now, the darkness between stars her home, solitude her constant companion. But perhaps, in some way, this is also a form of freedom. Samus answers to no one. She makes her own choices. She decides what missions to take and what causes to fight for. She is not bound by politics or organizations or the limitations of normal existence. She moves through the universe as a force of nature, appearing where she is needed and disappearing when the work is done. There is a purity to this, a simplicity. She knows who she is and what she is meant to do, and she does it without complaint or hesitation. Somewhere in the cold dark between stars, Samus Aran's ship glides silently toward the next crisis, the next impossible situation, the next time when someone will need her to be strong enough to save everything. She sits in the cockpit, alone with her thoughts and her memories, with the ghosts of everyone she has lost and the burden of everyone she will save. She does not smile often. She does not speak unnecessarily. She does not waste time wondering what could have been, or mourning the life she might have had if history had been kinder. She simply continues, enduring, surviving, protecting, being what the universe needs her to be, even though the cost is everything, even though the price is eternal isolation, even though she will never truly stop being alone. Because someone has to stand between civilization and the darkness. Someone has to be strong enough to face what others cannot face. Someone has to be the last defense when all other defenses have failed. And that someone is Samus Aran, the bounty hunter, the warrior, the protector, the legend, the last human in the cold. If you have enjoyed drifting through this story tonight, consider subscribing for more quiet journeys through Nintendo's worlds.